Hey everybody, and welcome to Bonsai by Alan. Today I'm going to work on this Elaeagnus. Scientific name, Elaeagnus pungens. And the pungens comes from the fact that it makes a very fragrant flower, which is followed by a fruit which is actually edible. This is a pretty common landscape plant in this area, and I live in the northern section of Zone 10 in the US, so pretty mild climate. I got this tree this summer and it had all this excess growth, and I just left it because I wanted to take cuttings. And just like the guava that I worked on a few videos ago, I'm going to do the very same thing with this guy. So I'm going to concentrate on cutting all the excess growth, but then use it as cuttings. So I've got my cup of seaweed extract that I soak my cuttings in for just a few minutes. I don't know if you need that, but I do it anyway. And then the rooting hormone, which is just your typical indole 3-butyric acid. And then I have my cutting tray, rooting tray, which is 80% perlite and about 20% potting soil. So the process is pretty simple. And if we look at the structure of this tree, it's definitely a slanting trunk. The apex of the tree is right here. So I can take all of this off. Obviously this really tall guy, take him off and just stick him in there. And I'll just be doing that. I dropped one. I'll be doing that for about the next 5-10 minutes. So I'm going to turn off the camera. And then once I'm done taking the cuttings and sticking them in the root bed, watering them in, then I'll come back and style the tree, paying more attention to actual structure and definition of the branches. The cuttings are stuck, and already the tree just looks so much better. This is really a cool tree. It's got great movement. And I'm going to put the camera on the tripod for most of the rest of this video, but I do want to show you some things. So if we look at the main branch here, this first main branch, I think it needs to come further down like that. And then we have a lot of movement going this way, but we have this branch right here which is going against the grain, shooting back that way. Although what I'm thinking of doing is taking it to right there and then wiring it back so it becomes part of this pad. We also have a first main branch that actually shoots up before it goes horizontal, but I don't find that big of a deal. And it looks like we're going to end up with 2 foliage pads there too. One here and one up top. We also have some reverse taper right here. But there's this little tuft of foliage right here that's actually coming in off a weird place of the first main branch. In a perfect world, you just take that off, maybe turn it into a little bit of gin. But I may save that just to hide the reverse taper. Just a little tuft of foliage there. Hide the reverse taper. No one will ever know. And then there's some other things like this branch here is also going against the grain. A lot of things need to be wired up. We have 2 different apexes that are competing. And I'm also going to remove a number of leaves so I can show you and I can see a little better what I'm doing. So that's the next step. Put the camera on the tripod. And so the next time we see this tree, it'll have a whole lot less leaves, and then we can start actually doing some of the things that I just talked about. I was in the middle of cutting the leaves and a little tree frog appeared, so I couldn't resist taking a little video of him. See if I can get him from a profile view. He still thinks he's hiding on me. There he is. Haha, that's so funny. I have now removed about 50% of the leaves, which gives me a much better look at the structure of the tree. And I am going to do the wiring with the camera on the tripod, but I just wanted to show a little more detail before I put the camera on the tripod. So right here, if you look, very faint, there is some wire scars on this tree. That's the only wire scars I can find. Very minimal. So no big deal. But I also wanted to show you this. So actually, because I'm going to take most of this off, I'm going to, if you notice, you've got this part here coming from back here, and this younger, smaller piece is also coming from back there. So this piece has some strange growth. Obviously I could cut it to here, but I am actually going to cut that entire piece off right to about, sorry man, I'm so bad at holding the camera, right to about there. And there's still a little stub left, but I can work on that better. So whenever you've got a situation like that where you've got two different competing areas of growth, I always try to use the thinner, younger one, because that will help with taper. Then we've got this stub here, so I'm going to cut that off too. And my vision for this tree is to take this branch down like that, and that is really going to set this tree off. Then I'm also going to take this branch down. I'm going to move this growth over this way, which will create a big hole here, but then I'm going to fill that hole with this branch right here. So that's all the wiring work. So I'm going to put the camera on the tripod and then get to work wiring this tree. I'm going to start by wiring this branch down. And as I've said before, you want to choose your wire that's just strong enough to hold the branch. Wire that does not have the strength to hold the branch is going to do nothing. And wire that is too heavy can make it very difficult to keep from damaging the branch. So you're walking well, I don't want to say a tightrope, because it's not that big of a deal really. And once you've done some wiring, you kind of understand what you're up against. Whenever I do any kind of bending, I have my thumbs and my fingers at the places where I'm bending, so it's much easier to feel the branch cracking than to hear it crack. Yes, hearing it crack is usually not a good idea. Well, it looks pretty good. I want it down more. Okay, that looks good. Then I'm going to take this guy. Not entirely sure it needs to be wired, this part, but I do want to wire this part right here. I'm going to wire it all the way across here like this. And then, like I said, I'm going to take this part and bring it into that space. So that's the next branch to wire. Pull it to it. And I've also said in other videos that my philosophy on wiring, as far as how tight to put the wire around the branch, I like to use the analogy of holding a live bird in your hand. You don't want it to escape, but you don't want to crush it either. So you want to wire tightly enough so that you get the bending that you want, but not so tight, because if you do too tight, then you can get wire scars cutting into the bark very quickly. And wire scars is another huge no-no for me. I try to avoid wire scars on my trees as much as possible, to the point of actually removing wire, perhaps even prematurely, just to keep the scarring from occurring. I'd rather wire a branch twice than wire it once and keep the wire on too long. The silence is deafening. So how we coming? That looks pretty good. Let me get this part a little bit further. Actually, I want that wired down too. Just like that. See how that just changes everything? Just makes it a nicer tree. Let's try to get it back into the camera. Right about like that. And I'm hoping that I can just bend this, because you know if I go like this, it bends from all the way over here. And I don't want to do that. I just want to bend it here. You hear the birdies in the background? I have pretty decent woods near my house, so I get lots of birds. Okay, let's bring him down. Without breaking anything.